Hey everyone, Geoffrey here. Today I have Ryan Swan with me. Ryan, do you remember when you joined the program?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember it really well. Yeah.
What was the date?
Oh, the date, the exact I got accepted, I think it was like April 30th.
April 30th, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and now we're just recording on December 14th, 2022. So yeah, you've been in the program for quite a while. Um, we had a conversation about this, about kind of your growth. You had a write-up about your growth, and it's been amazing so far. So the meat of this is going to be us talking about your learnings and how those learnings have really changed everything for you internally, but also have everything changed everything in your life as well, to a trajectory it's never gone to before. But before we get to those learnings, I want to spend some time to talk about kind of how things were like when you first met me. And even before you even met me, like how are things like? I'll let you have
Uh,
the floor here.
yeah, it was pretty desperate, like I'd say 6 months. Um even several months before she said that she wanted to separate, it was just like a really hard time. Like I didn't really look externally for any help, which is crazy to me looking back. Like I just really wanted things to get better, but I just was like stuck and just very stressed, a lot of anxiety. And then about I'd say about a month and a half before I got accepted into the program, she told me she wanted to separate. And that was just, I could see it coming, but at the same time, it just totally blew me away. Like
Yeah.
I somehow still thought like we would just kind of, figure things out and be together for the rest of our lives. But uh we'd been together for 13 years at that point, and it just like I couldn't deal with it. Like it just, that reality just couldn't be accepted into my brain, and caused me so much stress and anxiety. I couldn't sleep. It's just like in so much pain, just in a total panic. I had no idea what to do.
Yeah. And I think you were mentioning too that this was the first time in your life that you actually had a panic attack.
Yeah, just like a clenching in my chest where I just was like, felt like I couldn't breathe. And like physical pain, like all the way like down my arms and like up into my head, or my head just like hurt. It was
Mm,
like, yeah, it was kind of scary. And I was like, I just gotta breathe, and
yeah.
just like, but it was very much just like hanging on by my fingernails, kind of, you know.
Yeah. I think there's a couple of really painful aspects about having the bomb dropping on you. One is you've been together for 13 years at that point in time, and it was like a lot of my clients too. It's that feeling where, okay, we've been together for so long, there's no way. Things are bad, things are not the best, but there's no way it can ever get like that to what point it's like separation, divorce, this ending, etc. There's no way, because
Yeah,
you always think like, no, there's too much history, there's too much here, there's too much, there's the vows, there's everything. We have to at least settle, or we have to at least try. There has to be some trying,
yep,
right? So when you realize there's no trying, it's like the net gets ripped from underneath you, and now you're free falling for the first time. So this this pit existed for a very long time. You can see down it, but you're always supported by this net. Now there's no more net, and you're free falling. And I
yeah.
think the other thing too is also, if it was like a lot of my clients too, how done was she? So when she said I wanted to separate, how dead set was she on doing that?
That's the thing that really surprised me. Is I thought it would get to a point where we'd be like, okay, let's go to therapy now, or like let's try something now, and
Mm.
it was like a kind of casual conversation on a Saturday afternoon where I was like, how are you feeling okay? And she was like, I think I want to separate. And I was just like, what? And then I tried, as much as I could, and she was dead set. She was like,
Mm.
from that moment, it was like done in her mind. And she was, she was like, oh, there's no chance.
Yeah. And then of course you tried to talk to her out of it.
Oh yeah.
Maybe like have some explanation, maybe some closure for yourself. It's like, oh well, this is a shock to me. You've processed this, but I haven't.
Yeah.
How was that? How was her response when you responded like that?
Just like a wall, like a wall just went up, and it was just like, she didn't cry. She didn't try to like talk me through it. She was just kind of like, I'm done supporting you emotionally. We had a lot of conversations still. Like, she was willing to let me talk for a while. But yeah, she was just kind of,
yeah. Doesn't matter what you said, doesn't matter what is talked about. She was that set on it. And I think that's a second part of why it's so hard, because when you get that news of separation or divorce, you want to grab onto something. It's like, again, you're free falling, and maybe there's some branches along the way, and you're trying to grab onto whatever you can get. But then when you see that coldness from your partner at that point, when she's so done like that, it's like the branches get retracted. And no matter how much you try to grab something, it's just, nothing. There's nothing to grab to anymore. There's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can do anymore. It's done, and that's a very hopeless feeling too. So you had basically no inkling then of this happening until it happened.
I mean, there had been like a rough 4 months, and part of me definitely saw that something was coming, but part of me was definitely in denial. And a couple of things that you talk about in the program a lot are that, from my perspective, before that 4 months, things seemed like better. It's like, oh, things are going great finally, and I realized later why, once you explain that. But also, another thing you talk about is just how much confirmation bias had built up against me, to where she was just seeing everything I was doing as the wrong thing, Yeah.
And I think when someone's blindsided like that, that's a classic sign that safety is broken, right? Because the problem with safety is that it lives so deep within our blind spots. And let me make sure my mic is the correct mic here. I'm getting some blinking lights. Okay. Because if you don't have safety and your partner is holding a lot of these really negative paradigms about the relationship, opinions about the relationship, then she wouldn't feel safe enough to tell you about the problems. But then she also wouldn't feel safe enough to tell you she doesn't even feel safe.
Yep.
So the problem with a lot of people is, like you, right? You question the world in a very hypothetical way. So you ask yourself, what am I doing right? How will this work out? How will this be great? This future be great? What are the good things that are happening? What am I doing right? And so when the quote is like, if you want to see Jesus in a piece of toast, you'll see it. And so if you look for evidence of why you're right, why you have safety, then you'll find it. But the reason why we tell people in the program to be antithetic is because I want them to ask, how are you destroying safety? How are you not creating safety right now? How is it not okay? And if you had asked those questions earlier, you would have found out the root problems earlier, right? So it's a little bit of getting rid of that denial, that victim mindset, but also thinking in a different way, to question the world in different ways so that you can actually get to your subconscious things. And that's the thing about, if you look at therapists, if you look at the best thinkers in the world, they think that way. They think very antithetically. And because they know that the real answers always lie in the blind spots,
Yeah.
And I think the other thing too that's interesting, sorry to cut you off, is how I just forgot what I want to say, which is rare. But anyway, keep going what you were saying. I'm sure it'll pop up again.
Just what you were saying, because I felt like what I was doing was right. I felt like I was trying. I felt like I was trying to improve and fix things. I was just being defensive and like justifying whenever she'd bring things up. She'd be like, "You're not fixing things. Things aren't getting better." And I would just be like, yes, they are. You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Instead of thinking empathetically and thinking, you know, okay, why are they not getting better? Like,
Yeah.
what am I missing?
Right.
You know?
Right. And it's bringing me to my next point too, which I remembered now, is why people wait until things are very dire before seeking my help. Because some people ask me, right, hey Jeff, do you have a program for people who are just trying to better the relationship, not saving something from a dire situation, but do you have something for just okay relationships? I'm like, no, I don't, because nobody would buy that. Because the truth is, I could have told you, hey, Ryan, you needed this at that point before the bomb dropped and everything like that. I could have told you. I could have put this right in front of you. Hey, look, don't you want this thing?
Mm-hmm.
You would have just shoved it off and say, I don't need that. What are you talking about? It's not that bad here, because you're in that denial of how bad things really are, or denial of the trajectory of what you really are. And it's not until you reach this point where you're free falling and you realize now that you have nothing to grab onto and you feel that hopelessness. That's when you go, okay, I got to do something now. I cannot live in my lie anymore. I cannot live in my rose-colored glasses anymore. The glasses have been off now, right? It's done. Yeah.
I'm like smiling a little bit while you're saying that, because I asked you that question. I asked you that exact question a few months ago.
I remember
I was like, I see this trajectory in other relationships around me. I'm like, what can I do for these people? Or like, can they, I asked you that exact question. And I saw that, you know, I lived in that until I hit rock bottom right then, until I, like, as you're describing, until I free fell.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't deny it anymore. It was like, there was no more denial.
Yeah. What we say to people, it's almost like dealing with, and don't mean, you know, I don't know what it is. Whenever I say the word cancer, people like freak out, but I'm just using it as an example, people. Okay. So let's say you look at cancer, right? Cancer, let's say your cancer manifests itself at first as like a tiny little cough here and there, maybe slight discomfort in your lungs, whatever. If at that point in time, you're not going to go to a doctor and say, I don't have cancer, right? Or you are going to do that. And you're probably not even going to go to a doctor, because all the symptoms of cancer is very dormant for a very long time. And then when it goes to the advanced stages, then you feel, oh my gosh, this is intense pain right now. And it's intense pain for a very long time. So if you wait for the symptoms to occur before you're willing to take it seriously, then you're basically saying, I'm waiting till things are very dire before I can take things seriously. But by that time, it's almost like you're on the brink of being too late here. So my advice for people is like, don't wait till then, right? Be very hyper vigilant on what is my trajectory here, and could this be something really bad, right? And so the other thing too is like, when people ask the question like, well, your program is for like people in dire situations, mine is not so dire, can you help me? Like, well, yeah, that's like going to a really advanced surgeon, a spinal surgeon, who's like treating people from death kind of thing, like near death, and saying, well, I'm not dying, but can you fix me though? It's like, yeah, of course I can. If I can fix that, I can fix that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the problem is that most people aren't willing to undergo surgery. You know, it's still going to be really hard, and people aren't willing to do that until they have to. I guess that's our human nature. I guess
that's our human nature. And so the reason why, again, like, you know, if you guys want to wait till things are very dire, so be it. That's fine. We've already accepted that fact to be the truth, and which is why we engineer a program to be for those people, because those people are the only ones who are really willing to do the work. But if you can, before things are dire, if you can somehow find the motivation to actually become your best, that's even better. That's all I'm saying, right? It's even better, because people say all the time in the program, I wish I found you sooner, but you wouldn't have anyway, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we've had a lot of really good conversations, so many good conversations over the last 8 months, but I've found out since the separation that these problems were there for our entire marriage from the very beginning. And it's I told her the other night, like, I'm glad that I've like found this program, that I've had like resources now to figure things out, but it's such a tragedy that she had to suffer. I mean, we were married for
It is. And
12 years.
And I think that was what made my partner very hopeless too, right? Is when you like, she felt at that point in time a very deep unhappiness. Now she couldn't articulate what that was, why that was happening. But what she can do is she can express just how unhappy she felt. But whenever she expressed how unhappy she felt, I was always belittling that. I was always like trying to explain myself and say, dude, you're making it up, right? You don't have anything to be unhappy about. Look at all these things we have to be happy about. Look at all these things we have.
Yeah.
And so you're basically trying to use logic to try to convince her you shouldn't be so unhappy. But in the meantime, the subtext there is you're saying your feelings don't matter. The reasons behind your feelings are silly.
Yeah.
Right. And I will never be the guy who's capable of understanding just how messed up I am, the relationship has become. And so if I don't understand it, nothing good will ever happen. Nothing will change. And that is the part where she goes like, you know what? Forget it then. Same for you?
Oh, yeah. I think back to like, you know, I would be like, oh, you're hungry. You know? like
are you having a period?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, exactly. Like, I mean, what's more belittling than to like attribute these deep-seated feelings to like her current state of like being hungry or like thirsty or something. It's like, no, these are like fundamental issues of our relationship. And I just, I just wanted to push them down. I wanted it to go away, you know? Yeah. Instead of actually just trying to deal with it.
Yeah. So on that note, let's contrast to how things are like now. So obviously before this interview, you're kind of told me that, hey, Jeff, I don't want to put too many words in my partner's mouth because she's not in an interview with you. So let's talk about how things are like now, but understand people just that whatever he says now is just from his perspective, right? We don't want to like put too many words in his partner's mouth or whatever it is, because she might have a different perspective. But yeah, from your perspective, what's happening now?
It's honestly, it's like it blows me away, the difference. Like, I don't know how to like express it because it sounds kind of crazy, but it's like this has been one of the best years of my life. And I feel like the growth that I've had this year is something I haven't had since maybe like in my 20s, but like maybe ever. And I look back at just like how stagnant I felt, you know, and like directionless. And it felt like I'd been going through like years of just like, where am I going? Like, are things getting better? Am I doing the right things? And it just, for the first time in so long, feels like I'm doing the right things, like doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And like, and just like, even saying this sounds crazy to me, but I'm so grateful for the separation. Like, and that's from my perspective, where I was pretty happy in the relationship, you know?
Yeah.
But like, now that I really understand how much she was suffering and how much I was just trying to like sweep things under the rug, and how stagnant I was, like, I'm really grateful for it, because I realized I was never going to make this growth. I was never going to learn these things if she had stayed in the relationship.
Yeah.
And we had a great conversation about it the other night with where we both just acknowledged things were not going to change, you know? And that's what's great about that, is that I don't blame her for doing it. I don't have any resentment for her doing it, because I completely recognize where we were at and where it was going to stay for potentially the rest of our lives,
Yeah. I think if I akin this to my own life too, because my partner and I always have very deep conversations around, because my partner and I were both very driven people. Like, but then we question to ourselves sometimes, it's like, why are other people not as driven as us? And this may be too much of a assumption that I'm making here, but I know for a fact that for us and a lot of my friends who are very driven as well, that drive comes from some intense pain sometime in the past. For me, it was the intense pain of poverty. For my partner, it was the intense pain of being a woman in a very patriarchal home. I don't know what other people's pains are, but your pain in this case was the pain of free falling and not having anything to grab onto. And that really experience really woke you up, traumatized you, etc. And that drove your growth. But, pain is a good thing. For us. And I think that pain sometimes is necessary, because most people will look at their lives and go, okay, who are the people who are not that driven? It's usually the people who are coddled, who they might have gone through some rough times, but they have never gone through a time when they realize that nobody's coming to save them but themselves. Nobody, right? Like if I did not make money, I was going to get deported and then going back to my hut, right? There was no one to save me. And I think at that point, you also felt the sensation, no one is coming to save you. And I think that's a pivotal moment in people's lives when they realize that there's no one coming to save you but yourself. So you have to summon whatever it is you need to summon to get there. Was that kind of your experience, do you think?
Yeah. I think I shared a quote a while ago in the group that, or maybe I just sent it to you, but I think it's by Robert Bly, and it says that grief is the window into men's hearts. And that really struck me. It was like, I had this intense denial that we've talked about. And until I felt that intense grief and pain, I wasn't going to open up to it. I wasn't going to see it. And when I felt that, it just I had this kind of appearance that I had to project to the world. And even about our relationship, our relationship was a relationship that a lot of people looked up to, we were a couple that people were like, oh, they're a great couple.
Goals. Yeah. A couple goals.
Yeah. Right? And so even when she would bring things up, it was like, no, look, we're a great couple, and when that was gone, it was like that free fall that you're describing. I had to accept, this is not what I've been pretending it's been this whole time. And that really opened me up.
Yeah. So the takeaway that I want people to have from this is there was a quote with, I think, Kurt Hegget-Schweiler, one of our clients, and he says, don't waste the pain. So when you feel this intense grief, when maybe you find out that your wife wants divorce, things are really, really dire right now. It's very easy to let the excuses of oh, mine's too dire, so I shouldn't take action, or mine's too far gone. And you're going to use this as excuses. But if you do that, if you don't take this pain and you don't come away from it growing in the right ways, in a massive ways, then you're basically wasting your pain, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that later. But you're also telling me about how the connection, the emotional connection, the conversations, the openness has been the best it's been between the two of you as well right now. Tell me more about that too.
Yeah. That's an amazing part of it, where it felt like instead of separating and going to not talking or just interacting about all the details of pragmatic stuff, it's because of what I've learned, because of the changes I've been able to make, we've just had hours and hours and hours of these super great conversations of getting at the root causes of things. And
yeah. And she's a therapist too, right? So the fact that she's a therapist, and you mentioned to me too how you actually talk a lot about the principles in the program, perhaps maybe not using the same words, but like definitely the same principles. And later on, we'll talk about this too, how you and your partner thought I was a scam. This program, the whole program was a scam. But now the fact that you're talking about the principles and letting that kind of deepen your bond, your relationship, and also deepen your understanding of what the root causes are. As a therapist, to do that, that's fucking massive, you know? That's my flex, I guess.
It also just, you know, she had been a person that was, her whole life had been interested in relationships and learning this type of stuff. You know, this was what was interesting to her. And for me, I wanted good relationships, but I didn't make any real investment in learning how to do that. And so now that I am really interested in it, really am invested in it and learning all these things, it's like, it gives us this thing to connect on. Where, you know, I'm sharing things that I'm learning and she's interested to learn them too. And we've had so many great conversations just about like the epiphanies I've gotten from the program on like the root causes. And the other night I was telling her something about how, like, why, like the loss of safety and trust and how that happened and like the timeline. And she was just like furiously taking notes of like what I'm saying. And it was like, oh, this makes sense. You know?
That's awesome. Yeah. It's interesting because like that's how relationships are supposed to be, right? Because I look sometimes at our relationship too, and it's funny because like sometimes we look at other couples and the way they talk. When they're at dinner together, most couples talk either about some logistical things about, hey, did you do this? Did you do that? Or they gossip. They talk about other people. They talk about the bosses. They talk about coworkers. They talk about juicy gossip. But I look at our relationship, we never talk about other people. We never talk about the chores because like that's done at our times. During our dates, we talk about these deeply philosophical things about life, about what it means to be human. And it's actually a very inspiring, very positive conversation where it doesn't become a gossipy, negative piece of shit conversation kind of thing, you know, which most people have.
Yeah.
And because I think most people haven't really, they either don't understand just how deep you can go psychologically into investigating these things, but also they haven't seen the value in it. You're going to ask yourself, what do you talk about then during your dates? Okay, the only thing you can talk about is boring stuff or negative stuff.
Yeah. And I've really realized like how bad of a listener I was.
We'll dive really deep into that in a bit.
Okay.
But tell me about this, okay? Tell me about when you first saw me. Why did you think I was a scam?
Yeah, I guess I'm like a big like I like kind of research into things when I'm like, you know, like if I'm buying a toaster or something, I like research that toaster. I look for reviews and things like that. And I had a hard time finding information outside of what I was getting from you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I wanted like online reviews from like Yelp or something. And like I couldn't really find information outside of YouTube. And so, you know, YouTube comments are back and forth. It's like a very controversial topic, what you do to fix a relationship. There people opinions, you know?
Yeah.
And for me, I'd never invested in anything like a course, you know.
So you could be like, hyper vigilant to that, right?
Yeah. And so, and then when I told her about it, it was just like, oh, there's no way. Like, you know, especially since she was done, it was like, I'm done with this relationship.
Why do you waste money? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not going to take our money and go pay for this thing to like, aren't there already videos on YouTube that he has, you know, like, can't you just watch those? Like, yeah. So,
it's interesting you brought that up, right? like this whole notion of like independent reviews, and I want to spend a minute on that because I want other people to see kind of an inside scoop of this, and I think you see this now. But sometimes people look at all the reviews. Like we have 61 client interviews right now, and we pump a client interview every 2 weeks. Nobody in the industry does that. Nobody, like, not even come close. The closest maybe like once a month, once every 2 months, because we get a lot more success than those people. Then the question becomes like, well, can I see a review that is outside what you publish, Jeff?
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's think about that. Let's think about, well, one way we can get those reviews is by having some blogger, some reviewer come in and go, let me review your site and let me write an article about that, about how the pros and cons of it. Now, with our program, because we are very selective into who we select to be in the program, when would that ever happen? Never,
yeah.
Right? But that's a good thing, because if a blogger can go into a program without having some filter, that means that they don't cap the number of people that comes to the program. If you have uncapped number of people, how good can your service really be? How good can your community really be? So how good can your program really be?
Yeah.
So the fact that bloggers are able to buy someone's program and review it, that should be a major red flag to you if you really think about it. Right. The second one is around like Yelp reviews or something like that. Do you know how easy it is for me to fake Yelp reviews?
Yeah.
Google reviews.
Yeah.
Etc. Right? It's so easy to fake it. It's a short form thing. But look at our interviews. Our interviews, like you, it's an hour and a half long. We talk about deep principles. You're telling me I could find someone on the web and like fake a deep conversation about something like this? It's hard. I don't think that's possible. I don't think we can script this out,
Yeah. And a blogger is not going to do the work.
And they haven't really done the work. They don't need that thing, right? It's like someone who is not even a food critic, doesn't even understand food, doesn't even need food, goes to review a restaurant. It's like, why would you listen to that guy? He hasn't even like sometimes like Caucasian reviewers reviewing Asian food. I'm like, forget it. I'm not gonna listen to you. Like, you don't know what this is supposed to be. Right? And the last thing too, for people to think about too, is you want reviews from customers. So there's a site right now with a bunch of therapists, right? And they're saying, I want reviews not from people who have bought your program. I'm like, that makes no sense. I want independent reviews. Like, that makes no sense. It's like saying, I want to review this restaurant by people who haven't eaten in the restaurant yet.
Yeah.
Right? But at the same time, it's like, well, if let's say you want reviews from our clients who have actually been through the process, think about the sensitivity of this topic here. Would you, Ryan, in any context, would you have, unprompted by me, would you have gone out to the web and made a video about how awesome this program is? And also admitting that I sucked in my relationship, I was such a bad person. Would you have unprompted done that?
No.
Because it's not like a business course where like, oh, I made $1 million. Yeah, it's different. It's a very deeply personal thing that affects other people, etc.
And unless I felt like I was scammed. If I felt like I'd been scammed.
If you felt like you were scammed, yeah. So the fact that we don't have any negative reviews right now, 0 of scams, should say something, kind of thing, Like, we don't have any by people who have actually taken the program.
Mm-hmm.
So something for people to think about here. Like, if you're looking for those independent reviews, really understand what you're asking for. And really look at like, okay, with the way Jeff is doing right now, where he's having these in-depth interviews, which one is more believable? Let's think deeply about that.
Yeah.
So what was the point in your journey, Ryan, when you decided, oh, maybe this is not a scam?
Well, I continued watching more of the YouTube videos. I watched some of the client interviews. And then I actually took the masterclass, filled out the application for the program. And didn't get in.
What did we say? I don't even remember. What was our reason for turning you down initially?
Jason just said I wasn't ready and hadn't watched enough of the YouTube and wasn't ready to do it. And then she got a place to move out, and that's when I got like really desperate. And that pushed me to, really watch more of the videos and be like, I guess even then I was still a little bit in denial, that it was going to happen. But yeah, I think not getting into the program really surprised me.
I was like, wait, I have my money right here, take it.
Yeah.
And then we're like, I don't want your money right now.
Yeah, that surprised me. And I didn't get in a couple times.
So you tried applying twice and you didn't get in twice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what I want to say to people for that one is like, think about how people like, we make a lot of money, obviously. Like I don't hide that, right? I make a lot of money, and we as a team make a lot of money. I think you as clients, probably you can count by how many people are joining per week. You can know how much money we make. But at the same time, it's almost like the amount of money we make shouldn't say that we're money hungry, because we're literally turning people down. We're literally turning people down, taking our money, right? Now, you have another program who doesn't have that filtration process. You can pay their program and access the program however you want. I feel like that's more money hungry. But for us, it's like, if we don't think we can help you, if we don't think you're coachable, if we don't think we're a good fit, I'm gonna say no. Keep your money, invest it somewhere else, and then when you're ready, come back, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just think about how we do that not for us. We don't gain anything from doing that. That's all for you guys.
Yeah.
It's all for your benefit.
Yeah. And I think he was right. Like I wasn't ready. And that also did help convince me, because I was like, man, if this is a scam, that's taking it pretty far.
That's like a long con right there.
Yes. You're gonna no one does scams like that.
Yeah. And then when you join the program, I'm sure there was still some thoughts, inkling of like, okay, this can be that good, like, right? At what point did you go, oh shit, I got to take this seriously? This is like this is real work. And
yeah, I think from the YouTube videos, there was still like that little bit of like, what's the difference? Like, can I just watch these YouTube videos and get the same results? And then like getting into like seeing all the modules and seeing like how thoughtfully it was laid out, and like seeing how complex and how much it built. It's not like, here's a bunch of modules, like, pick and choose what you want to do. It's like you've clearly spent years figuring out how to order this to be the most effective possible. And like, I have a really good friend that I've talked to about the program, and I've told him some parts, and he's like, what does like dopamine have to do with like fixing your relationship? And I was like, no, that's like how deep it goes. Like, this isn't like fix one little thing about your relationship. This is like figuring out like what you've been doing wrong with all of your relationships, and like with your life, and like how you see yourself, just getting into all these deeper things. And so
and it's almost like that systems thinking, because someone asked me the other day, like, Jeff, how did you create this program? One of our clients who just joined, and I said, like, well, the same principles that I teach you to learn the program, that's the same mental principles that I use to actually come up with this. And it's all systems thinking, right? It's like, okay, so for example, you have sexual passion issues. Why is that? Well, is it because you are having conflicting goals in a lot of life, so you don't feel like you're a unit, you don't feel like you're a team, and so if you can't feel like a team, then you can't build sexual passion, right? Or is it because you don't feel safety? And if you don't feel safety, then your partner cannot surrender. As a feminine, then of course she doesn't feel good having sex, kind of thing, right? Then you can go down too, like, why do you not have goal alignment? And so there's a very systematic way of breaking it down to be like, okay, here's the problem. Well, here's the cause of this problem, but what causes this problem, this problem, this problem? And so you can go to the internal self too, and you can ask, for example, like, well, okay, if let's say I know what safety is, why can't I create it? Why can't I recognize it? Well, because you're hypothetic thinking, not antithetic thinking. Well, why do I antithetically think? Well, why can't I antithetically think? Well, usually because you have lived this life where you get dopamine from your outcomes, not from your process, right? You're tethered in a way. And so it keeps going all the way to like self-esteem. And so all these, what you're saying is like all these principles, they become this complex web. And once you see it all, you're like, oh my gosh, this really goes, okay, yes, the goal is reconciliation, but to get there, you're going to master all these root things that all culminate to this, right? Well, a lot of people in relationships, they just say like, well, just communicate better. We went, okay, I understand the goal is to communicate better, but to do that, you need to create safety. To do that, you need to build your bulletproof vest. To build your bulletproof vest, you need to be untethered. To be untethered, you need to do this, to do this, to do this.
And yeah, when I saw how deep it went, that's what I loved about it, because, you know, she had been like, can you read these books? And those books just didn't resonate with me because it was those like surface level things, you know?
Set boundaries here. Understand each other's attachment styles. Know their love language. It's like, I get it, but there's a lot of things missing here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's also what, because I had to figure out a way to pay for the program without using like mutual money, you know? And that's the thing that convinced her when she saw like how deep it was going, that she was like, oh, this is good stuff. Like that's
and I always say too, like people don't have relationship problems. People have problems with themselves that reflects in that relationship. All right. So even with the business too, I often say this to people, you know, the reason why I think you're not succeeding in your business is not because you don't know enough tactics. I think you know marketing, you know sales, you know everything tactically, but then the way you live your life, the way you think, doesn't allow you to learn as fast as possible, doesn't allow you to grow, doesn't allow you to like be confident in the moment, to pivot in the moment. It's just a lot of things wrong with the way we think. It's a self, right? Same thing for relationships. Like I think most people know the general idea of like, okay, don't scream at your partner, create safety. Even though we don't call it that, we kind of know the importance of that. But it's like, why don't we do it? Because we have some internal issues here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And before it was always like the willpower, you know, like, oh, I shouldn't be angry, so I'm gonna like just force that down. That's like, you know, that's obviously not how you do it.
And that's the thing, right? The benefit that you have and that I have now is, you know, that's the benefit of, you know, some people always ask me like, well, what's your degree in this, Jeff? Like, what, did you study this thing? And people don't understand that, like, no, I don't have a degree on this. I did data science before, and I don't have a license to practice this. I just do it. I just coach. People get really confused, like, and then they're like, are you even married, man? Like, no, I'm not. I'm getting married next year. People get so confused.
Yeah.
And the best explanation I can give to people is almost like, imagine you are a native English speaker. You were born in the US and you grew up speaking English versus someone who grew up in Indonesia, which is me. And you had to learn English from scratch. You had to like pick apart all these nuances of why is it like that? Why is it like this? And you have to build it from the ground up. I bet that foreign teacher is going to be a better teacher. Because I bet right now, if I ask you a lot of grammatical questions about why do you phrase your English sentence this way, you wouldn't understand it. You wouldn't understand it. Just the way it is. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Sounds right.
Sounds right. And so it's kind of the same thing here. Like the fact that I built my knowledge from everything from scratch, from my point of pain. You build your knowledge from the point of pain, right? That forces us to be a lot more methodical about how we learn stuff. And so now we can articulate these little nuances that most people cannot articulate. But the important part about articulating it and being able to spot those nuances is that if you don't know how to spot those nuances, you don't know how to replicate that. It's just something you know, but it's not something you can scientifically go, I can engineer that. You know, that's important.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk about this untethering thing. So just to give people a quick definition of untethering, right? It's actually, before we go there, I want to talk about YouTube for a bit. You said like you couldn't see the difference for a while between the program and YouTube. Now that you're pretty advanced in the program, what would you say are the key differences between the program and YouTube?
I'd say YouTube to me is you go into things. I mean, like you give really good information for sure. But the YouTube videos are, 15 or 20 minutes, and they're not connected like in this like larger organization.
Mm.
And then when you in the program, it's sequenced like really deliberately, and the videos are, hour and a half at the shortest, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Some of them are 2.5 hours, and it's also very dense information. Like, especially at the beginning, some of those videos, like a 2-hour video, would take me maybe 8 or 10 hours to go through.
Yeah.
Because I was pausing it so much and taking notes and organizing notes, and like, so I don't. And the depth, you just can't go into that depth on a YouTube video. Like, yeah. So,
well, yeah,
I saw it really quickly.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, because like that is a challenge that I have with YouTube. Is I'm not at a point where I'm kind of finding myself saying the same things over and over again, because I'm like, I don't know how to go deeper here. Because in order for you to know this deeper concept, you would need to know this prerequisite concept. But I don't have time in a YouTube video, and nobody will watch a YouTube video that's like a course, right? Like YouTube is not going to like that. People are going to drop off pretty fast. And so with YouTube, it's almost like you have to start from ground zero every single time. And each video, you have to start them from ground zero. So there's only so far you can build in a 20-minute video, no matter how good you make it. That's kind of a dilemma that I have mentally of like, how do I deepen the YouTube videos without starting from ground zero each time? Or how can I go further starting from ground zero, kind of thing? But then in the program, of course, like we know how sequentially you're going to take the program, so we can build one principle on top of another. We can see the associations, etc. That's what you're referring to, I'm assuming.
Yeah. I mean, that also, starting the program, I was really surprised with like the first whole section being, not getting into anything with like what to do in the relationship. It was like starting at like just how I learn and how, like starting at those principles.
Yeah.
It was hours and hours and hours just how to start learning.
Yeah.
Before
it's learning how to learn. Yeah, it's learning how to learn, because like it's almost like if you go to a medical school, if you go to school, I think most people have felt this, right? You go to school, you start your semester, and then in the middle of the semester, you start to find out, okay, I should have learned it in this way this whole time. I should have done that. Right.
Yeah.
But then now you're in a pickle. You're like, oh shit, I already didn't learn that. Now I'm here and I have to redo everything there. We're trying to avoid that, because once you learn how to learn, you can learn very complex things very quickly. But also, what we teach in the program is not hard skills, right? Soft skills. Hard skills like mathematics, for example. From every mathematical equation, there is a right answer. There's a solid, concrete right answer. There's one way to do this. And if you do this right, I can see it, I can touch it, I can feel it, and good. If you did it wrong, even slightly, I will know that. But with soft skills, with the way you talk, with your emotions, everything like that, there is no right answer. There is no one answer. It's all subjective. It's all very soft, which is why, like in a work setting, people always say, like, I would rather hire someone with no hard skills but high soft skills, rather than someone with high hard skills, low soft skills. Because soft skills is impossible to nurture, very hard. And so we're doing something ambitious here. So you cannot use the standard of learning that you used for learning hard skills. Because here you need to learn in a way where you can spot through your blind spots. You can spot through your subconscious. You can spot through your subconscious programming, etc. And that's a next level kind of learning. And people don't get that until they get further in the program, you know.
Mm-hmm. I've always kind of struggled with those soft skills, and that's something that really impressed me about how like dedicated you are to teaching that in people, because like you said, it's a very ambitious thing that you're doing.
Yes.
And I've seen in so many videos the belief that you have in people to learn them and to grow.
Learn the material.
Like there's videos I watch where I'm like, man, I would give up on this guy, you know? And I see that you don't. Like you believe in everybody, and it's really encouraging and really amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. We try to do that because, like, I believe in every single one we enroll. If I don't believe in you, I'm not going to take your money, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah.
There are people I get emails from, and I could just go like, you know what? Forget it. Like, you're just too far. It's just too far. I can't do anything with this. But I do want to talk about this untethering notion. And just for people to define what untethering is, again, we kind of defined this earlier a bit. It's when you are shifting your brain's focus away from the outcomes and into the process. And for people to understand just how important this is, I want to start with like a quick example here. And this is something I recently kind of epiphanized on my own, and I'm going to put this in a program soon, but this is massive for me. Like my geeky brain loves this stuff. So in life, there's always two outcomes: falling and striving outcomes, if you really think about it. So striving outcomes is like you trying to lift something, any physical exertion, running faster. The more willpower you place into that thing, the more creative energy you place into that thing, the more you just bro your way into it. You can push it harder, you can lift it higher, you can run faster. That's striving outcomes. But then there's a lot of parts in life, especially with emotions, which are falling. Think about falling asleep. The more you try to fall asleep, the more willpower you add to it, what happens? The less you can fall asleep.
Yeah.
So think about the word falling in love. Having your partner to fall back in love with you. What is that? That's a falling. Falling into trust. That's why we do the trust fall. So even falling into your own emotions, just observing it, that's falling. Everything is falling. So when it comes to emotions, it's all a falling outcome. The problem is when people try to use striving processes, willpower, like you said, to get falling outcomes. It doesn't work, which is why it gives a sensation for people like, I tried so hard to save my relationship, but she's not coming back. Well, because you're trying in the wrong way. You're trying the striving way, right? And one last thing I'll say on this one is like, think about when you sleep, Ryan. How many nights have you slept in your life? 1,000 nights, like many thousands of nights, right? When was the last time of those thousands of nights you remember the exact moment you fell asleep?
Yeah, never.
Never. Why? Because the exact moment you fall asleep is the exact moment when you stop thinking about falling asleep and you just focus on the process of falling asleep solely. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So for people to understand, like, what does untethering feel like? That's what it feels like. It's a moment when you're so 100% on the process and none on the outcomes. That's when things happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so when people try to like check up on the relationship. Are we together yet? Is she coming closer? Is she not coming closer? You indirectly do things and say things that actually make it harder for your partner to fall back in love.
Yeah.
Right? If you think about it that way.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
So what was that revelation of untethering like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I follow the process to get that process. I don't know, like it was like you do these steps, and I did them, and it tethered me to the process instead. So it was like every time, you know, I've very deliberately tracked my emotions and feelings, and it's a very helpless feeling being tethered to a partner.
Yeah.
But retethering to the process always felt actionable, you know, like you're saying, like everything I did being tethered towards her was pushing her away. And I'm really glad for the YouTube videos, because it started me on that process of untethering. Like, at least made me like wake up to it and realize that my panic and anxiety was just pushing her away so quickly. And at least it like let me slow down enough that I could start the program, start all the real processes. And
because if you think about it, right, like untethering, the act of like not focusing on the outcomes but focusing on the process, that's a falling outcome too. Like you getting to the point of untethering is you falling into untethering. Right. And so, like you said, you felt a bit silly, I think, saying this, but like I just did what Jeff said. There's nothing magical about it, right? It's like, but then it's like, that is what it is, though. It's supposed to be simple. It's supposed to be simple as just like you do what was said, you blindly follow. Because if I tell you, you untether so that you can get here, and I keep stressing that, and you keep stressing that, then you can never untether. That's like you saying like, okay, I'm going to drink water. I'm going to take my melatonin, and I'm going to just do all these processes, turn off my lights, not look at blue screens, so that I can fall asleep. Yeah, you're focused on a process, but you're still having that outcome still there in the back of your mind. And you're not going to fall asleep with that mindset. You have to let go of that completely. And that's kind of the hard part that people, the tethered brain cannot understand, is that. And so when it comes to the relationship, when it comes to your growth, there's the reason why you don't grow as fast as you want, or your partner is really having a hard time surrendering to that relationship because of that reason. You know, the only way is to untether fully, right? And it's also very hard to teach what untethering feels like, because no human has ever been there. Meaning, like, no human has ever been at the state of untetheredness and observed it. Because it's impossible. The same way, you've never observed yourself falling asleep. You've never observed yourself in the state where you fall asleep and you're untethered. Because the ironic part is that if you are there, if you observe yourself falling asleep, then you would not fall asleep, because now you're tethered again. It's just mind-blowing to think about, you know?
I've had that experience of falling asleep and thinking, oh, I'm falling asleep.
And then you wake up, right? Yeah. So it's a really funny thing with like getting your partner to fall in love with you, getting for you to surrender to the program, to the processes, etc. It's really a hard thing to get to, but it takes a lot of trust and a lot of surrendering to the process itself without any expectation of an outcome, you know? And you also mentioned the 4 ingredients of falling in love, or 4 ingredients of like surrender, for your partner to fall back in love with you. And for people who don't know what these are, basically, you know, I want you to think about decisions as 2 kinds of decisions that we make. There's decisions with surrender that we make, and decisions without surrender. And you've made both. There's sometimes when you choose a job, for example, choose a house, choose a partner, and you're fucking all in. And when problems come, the first thing you think about is not, how do I get out? What if these other people would be better? But you think about, how do I go through the problem? How do I solve this? Well, there's decisions you make without surrender where you're not both feet in there yet. So whenever problems come, the first thing you think about is, what if I didn't choose him and I chose this guy instead? with this woman instead. What would that be like? Right? That's where your mind goes. So the goal, of course, is to get your partner who is right now like, I want to be out of this relationship, to, hey, how can I surrender to falling in love with this person again and jump with both feet again? And what we don't want, though, are the kinds of reconciliation where it's half-assed. I come back, but my mind's still thinking about other relationships because I haven't really fully surrendered to this. So remind us again, like 4 ingredients. What are they?
Building evidence, starving enemies, empowering her and giving it time. And just knowing that alone was so powerful for me, because I think that's the part of the program where you're like, okay, you're untethered, but you can't just, you still need to stay focused on what's happening and what you're doing. And that was just really encouraging to have those ingredients to surrender. And I don't know, do you want me to expand on what those are?
No, like I think you bear up a good point, because like people, I think, misunderstand untetheredness as not giving a shit about the reconciliation. It's like, well, like if some people said like, yeah, I'm so angry with my partner, I don't give a shit if she comes back or not anymore. I'm so untethered. That's not untethered, right?
Yeah.
Because the fact that you're still angry about your partner not wanting to come back means that you care so much about the outcome that it angers you. So it's not coming from a place of untetheredness. Untetheredness is when like you don't even think about it anymore, right? Because but then you are following the process, and if you do get the reconciliation, you welcome it. Like you're 100% with the process, and it's really difficult middle ground for people to wrap their heads on, and it's a place of want. I don't need her to come back. I'm not indifferent, but I want her to come back. But I know that if I want her to come back, I need to be untethered first. Very ironic. But yeah, just to expand on the 4 ingredients, right? First one, again, is building evidence. So you need to show your partner here a ton of evidence that you've changed, all your changes. That's the easy part. The hard part is the second part. Second part is you need to have the absence of contrary evidence, right? So for example, if you apply for a job and they tell you all these great things about the job, but then you look around and you go like, oh my God, I see so many miserable people. Can you really surrender to that? I don't think so, right? Now, let's look at the third ingredient. Again, it's the empowerment again. So let's say that you are trying to choose a job and you haven't interviewed with another company before. Never, right? And you're not given a chance to interview with another company too. Yeah, you can work for this company, but aren't you going to always wonder like, what if? 100%. You cannot surrender to it.
Yeah.
Unless it's time. Or if you're rushed into a decision, you cannot surrender to it. So you need all 4. If one is just missing, you're screwed, right? Now I'm going to branch off from this into this notion of hunting again. How people tend to hunt, use a striving approach to try to save their relationship. If you look at the 4, right? What ingredient does hunting serve?
Yeah, doesn't serve any of them. It's
maybe
doing the
one.
opposite.
If anything, one, right? Ingredient number 1. Yeah, you can do things to like plant some evidence that, oh, I've changed. Maybe the 1, but then number 2, you'll break it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Number 2 that's doing the opposite of what number 2 is doing. Yeah.
Right, because you're logically saying the things, but then you're emotionally, the subtext again, like we said earlier, is not suggesting it. You're obviously destroying number 3 because you're not letting your partner really reign free here, and you're definitely destroying number 4. So how can your partner surrender? So some people have this notion of like, the more I try, the more she goes away. Well, no fucking wonder, because you don't understand what it means for her to fall back in love with you, what she needs.
Yeah.
How is that manifesting in your life? Like, because you started off as a hunter on this stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
How is it now? Because like now it's the process of reconciliation is still happening for you. How's that like when you stopped hunting? How scary was that for you to stop hunting?
I don't know if it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that was hard. What I remember more is that it felt like letting go of a lot of anxiety, and like instead of having to be like, oh, what do I need to do? What do I need to do? It was like, okay, I know what to do now. I know what's way better and what's going to work. And so, yeah, it felt more like relaxing than like, I mean, it's hard to let go too. You know, it feels at the beginning like giving up, you know?
Yeah.
But the reality of it is that the anxiety and the stress levels went way down.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a weird sensation for people to grasp. It's almost like the moment you fall asleep, for example, is the moment you don't give a shit about falling asleep anymore. Right?
Yeah.
But you let go because you care about falling asleep. If you care about falling asleep, you have to let go.
Yeah.
So that really paradoxical mindset, it's really hard to grasp, but I think that's what you're trying. It's like your logical brain is really hard to grasp at first, but then once you actually do it, you get there. And only when you get there, you're like, oh, I know how that feels like. And as I always say, like, untetheredness is not something you can explain to someone, because we cannot really feel it. We cannot really identify what it is, but we know it when we get there. We know it 100%. The same way you know it when you fall asleep. You know? And I think the other interesting, difficult thing to wrap your head around too with untethering is also around like that middle ground, finding the middle ground of it's not you not caring about someone, it's you wanting to care. But then again, if you want to care, then you untether first and you let go of the outcome. I think that was hard because like you felt like you had to go to this like the other extreme of like, do I need to not care then? Right? It's almost like a picture like someone riding a bike. At first you sway left and you're very tethered, then you overcompensate and you become indifferent. But then eventually you kind of find the middle eventually, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of like how your journey was, if it's similar to mine, I'm guessing.
Yeah, that was a really amazing part of the program. Was like I want to say it's in like phase 4, like towards the end of phase 4, where that happens. And it was like at that exact moment that I was watching the videos, it was like I'd gotten to this point where it was like, yeah, I don't need this relationship, you know? And it was like I'd overcorrected to where I felt like indifferent.
Yeah.
And then like right then was like bringing in like the correction and like coming back to the middle ground of being like, no, there are a lot of really great things about the relationship that I want, like my noble intentions around it, and really learning to like just admire and love her so much more. So it's such like you were saying, there's so many paradoxes in it and things that are hard to describe, but feeling untethered from her, but at the same time having so much admiration and love for her.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing balance to find.
Yeah. I feel it. And I wish, again, like you, right? I wish there was some words to articulate it, but it's like, it's so hard. You just have to take people there and go like, look, feel it for yourself. And then you'll know what I mean, how hard it is to explain how untetheredness feels like, how good that feels like, etc.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about this notion of also letting your partner explore other alternatives, right? And this happens a lot. It happened in my relationship where I actually explored other relationships. My partner did too. It's a lot of relationships within our clients too, who are married for like 15, 20 years, who I will literally say to them, like, look, if they want space, if they want to see other people, you have to let them. You have to. Mm-hmm. And this is a very controversial topic for a lot of people. It's like, what the fuck are you saying, right? Are you kidding me right now? People say like, this is a fucking beta move, fucking weak move, fucking like low value shit. People don't get it. But again, there's a few questions we need to ask ourselves here, right? It's like, first of all, why did your partner even have the thought to explore other relationships in the first place? Why? Now, if you could look at your partner, like, why?
Yeah, I mean, I see that she wasn't happy, like she'd been suffering so much, and it was like like, what are the other options? Like, what
Yeah.
can I be happy?
I want to mythologize that even further, right? Because like something that my partner said to me that really hit home for me was, Jeff, I have one life. I have like one consciousness here, right? And right now, the one life I have is with a guy who makes me miserable. I'm unhappy every single moment I spend with you. And what's worse is that not only am I miserable, whenever I tell this guy how miserable I am, he makes me feel even more miserable by telling me how I'm wrong for feeling miserable. And this guy thinks he's so perfect that he doesn't understand how miserable he's making me. And he makes it to be about my problem. Now, you tell me, I'm sure when you were a kid, Jeff, you had dreams and hopes of meeting your dream woman. What if your dream woman turned out to be a nightmare? What would you do then? Are you going to always say, no, 100%, I want to stick with this relationship? After all that? Hell no. Get the fuck out of here. My human brain is going to go, I have one life. I need to make it count. Who do I go with? So if your partner has like been with you 10, 15 years and she wants to leave, if you resist that, if you resist her leaving, that is why she decided to leave.
Yeah.
Because it means that you don't understand jack shit about what she's going through. And worse, if you blame her for wanting to leave, you even understand even less.
That was a really empowering thing for her, was just people seeing her as the one that decided to separate. She's seen as the one that did this to our family. So me being able to come to her and tell her, from learning what you just explained, but me being able to tell her, like, who was in so much pain that they decided to end this? It wasn't me. Like, I'm seen as the victim, but who was the real victim here? Like,
yeah.
I wasn't in so much pain that I wanted to stop it.
Exactly. And the worst part, is like, both of you are victims in your own right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Both of you were victimized in your own right. Yeah, your partner decided to leave, but also you did a lot of things to like make her feel terrible. But again, whose pain is more intense here in this case, right? The leaver or the leavee? Because here you have a problem. Your partner leaving, for example, at that point, you have a problem where you can go to your friends, you can go to therapists, you can go to the internet and instantly get sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
She has a problem where she's so unhappy, but if she goes to the internet, her family, she gets hated.
Yep.
So she can't talk about, she's miserable, but she can't talk about it with her family, her friends, nowhere. I mean, oh my God, I can't imagine how that feels like. And then people say like, oh, just try harder, dude. Like, be loyal. It's like, I did. I was. But this guy doesn't see it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what she experienced. And like, after the separation, she just felt not supported. And like, I had so much support. Everyone was like on my side, and she did. From the conversations we've been able to have since then, I've really come to understand how long she was unhappy and how long she tried, how long she didn't give up.
Yeah. And the other thing too that a lot of men say is like, oh, what a weak move, right? A strong man wouldn't allow her woman to just like explore or whatever. Mm-hmm. No, I want to be the choice. I want to be the choice. They say that. And I'm like always saying, okay, so let's say you say that. Let's say you say that you are the only choice and you convince her to stay. You don't think she's always going to sleep with one eye open and go like, I wonder. And you don't think you're going to sleep with one eye open? Let's be real here. Only weak men are afraid to give their partner the freedom. Because they're afraid that once their partner gets the freedom, they'll see, wow, that's a lot of better candidates out there. Right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like some North Korea shit, right? It's like, no, I'm the strongest country. You have to believe me. I'm the strongest country. If you go out to look at other countries, I will kill you.
Yeah.
Does that make you really strong though? Or at a third person looking in, you're like, that's fucking weak, dude. But all these men who are like hyper alpha about this stuff, it's like, that's really weak, man. Because for me, it's like my partner can go to Vegas, whatever. I don't care. She goes to the bachelor party. I don't care. Go. Have some guy friends. Go. Because I know like no one can create more value than me. And that's the security I always carry with me, kind of thing. Sounds arrogant, but that's what real strength, confidence is. You know? I know you're not at a point where you feel that yet, right? It's like you feel like I am the highest of all the men of all the competition. Or maybe you do. Where do you think you are in that, spectrum?
I'm definitely, you know, when we met, she said that she saw this thing in me, you know, that's like, it was kind of a love at first sight type of thing. And she saw this thing in me that like this potential that I had. And it was like, I had never lived up to that. So I feel like I'm finally living up to what she saw in me. And
she says these things like, I'm finally seeing the changes. And I think even though she doesn't say it often, sometimes like the fact that she's actually talking to you about the principles, about your growth, you can tell she's noticing these things. She's internalizing these things. And it kind of brings me to my next point of like, you know, some men will say, if you allow your partner to see other people, then you're opening the can of worms there to where you're enabling her to do that. Now she's just going to cheat on you all the time. Once a cheater, always a cheater kind of thing. I mean, let me ask you first, like, what would you say to those people? How would you reinterpret things for those people?
Well, I don't know if you would put it a little bit differently, but for me, a thing that she's struggled with is like, she doesn't want to feel owned by me. You know, she wants to feel like she's her own person. She's, you know, that's her body. It's her life. It's her choices that she makes with it. And, you know, she really struggled not with being monogamous or like being in a relationship with me, but like the feeling of being like owned, you know?
That's magical, because that's basically ingredient number 3, which is a sense of agency. It says that you are making the decision yourself and your decision is not made for you by someone else.
Yeah.
It's like, do I go into this relationship because I want to be here? I've explored others, but I want to be in this one. Or am I in this one because I feel like I'm obligated to because of family pressure, societal pressures, the pressure you give, etc. But I can't really give myself to this one decision, one partner, one person, whatever it is. And that's a normal feeling to have. So like a lot of people are very quick to label people as like, you are loyal or you're not loyal. But really the problem is, I don't think a lot of men understand how to become someone who their partner wants to be loyal to. Right?
I totally took it for granted as this obligation that she had. And in my mind, I didn't even realize that that she didn't have to, you know, she didn't have to stay.
Yeah. And it's going to explain sometimes, like with a lot of client stories, we do have a lot of clients whose partners had affairs, stuff like that. But once they reconciled in this proper way, in this legitimate way where we allowed the freedom first, and then once they explored, they realized like, oh my God, I want this flavor now. Like, I know I want this flavor. That reconciliation is very, very permanent. Like, we've had interviews running back to like 3 years ago, and they're still together now. And I'm still going to reach out to them to go like, hey, let's have a follow-up interview. And it's that permanent, because like a lot of people often say like, once a cheater, always a cheater. That's not true. Once a cheater, but once you find the right person, you no longer become a cheater. You don't need to be. You know, you don't want to lose that.
Yeah. And I actually really kind of like the challenge of like, my goal isn't to be good enough for this relationship to work. Like my goal is to be the best person at relationships that she's ever met, like, and that's where that surrender comes from. I feel like, she's not needing to go to a friend or to someone else to feel like she can have a really deep conversation and be really understood, because I'm that person. And that's, I'm not that person, but I'm growing and I'm learning, and that's my challenge, is always becoming person.
Better. And it's the thing about learning soft skills, right? There's no point when you get a right answer.
Yeah. And I love that.
Different variations of better.
Right.
Endless variation of better, right?
Because it's not something I want to work on until we reconcile. It's something I want to work on forever.
Yeah.
And that's how I've kind of come to embrace the soft skills, because that was always hard for me to understand, and always, felt too complex. And you've really embraced those paradoxes and the nuances and stuff.
Yeah, it's hard. Jason knows. Jason, guys, is one of my employees. He's actually moving to Houston in 6 months' time, but he knows just how many sleepless nights I have just thinking about principles, jotting things down, like filling up notebooks. It's hard to like even come up with like this falling versus driving thing. That's like a year of thinking of like because nobody tells you this stuff. It's something you just have to think and get it, the eureka moment yourself. And it's just how we create the program. It's so hard, right? Now, the other thing I want to talk about, this empowering your partner thing too, is that some people will also say, like, oh, if you enable your partner, if you allow this to happen, then she will go ahead and cheat. Well, if you like reined her in, maybe she wouldn't have cheated. It's like, do you think your partner is some kind of animal? Like,
yeah,
you just do this to her and she has no capacity for thought, for like rational thought, for like her own morality to go like, oh, I'm free now, so I'm going to destroy everything. It's like, I don't think she's like that. And if you do think that, then is there any wonder why she left in the first place? Why she wanted to go? If that's how lowly you think of her, That's the other thing too, is like, do you understand the paradox of what you're saying? Sometimes people, I don't get that.
Yeah. I mean, I know her, and trying to do that would have completely backfired,
Yeah.
Like, and I mean, because she's like you're saying, she's a human. Like, no one wants to live like that. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And last thing too is also like you said, right? Even if you do reconcile, the threat of other men being in the picture, the threat of other partners, the threat of her leaving you for someone else is always going to be there. Because we live in a very modern world where the women don't have to be stuck with a man for financial or whatever reasons anymore. They're free to go on their own. And that's the reality. Like a lot of men right now, they like to go back to that old reality where they like to dominate with money, with the power, whatever it is, because they want to create this fake sense of, no, the only choice is me. But the reality is it's not like that anymore.
Yeah. Thank God.
And thank goodness for them too, for you too, right? But then when that happens though, is like the threat of her leaving is not going to go away, even if you reconcile, even if you get married or remarried. So unless you make the internal growth to become this irreplaceable asset, you're always going to be sleeping with one eye open. Always. And the only way to not sleep with one eye open is you have this confidence to go, I'm the highest value. And I believe in my own value so much, and I believe in what we have so much that I can let her go. So the people's inability to let their partners go and roam free, people think like that will go away once they reconcile. No, it will never go away. You'll always be controlling. And if you're controlling, your partner will keep wanting to go. It's really funny. It's a really funny paradox too. Like it's so hard to explain, but a lot of people don't get that, Yeah. Okay, I want to discuss one last thing here before we go. And I want to talk about this concept of safety for a bit. So one of the first things you said in your write-up to me was like how you finally understood the root of your problems here. And the root is really safety, and really the very secretive ways that you've destroyed safety over the years. Moments when you didn't think you destroyed safety, but you actually did. Mm-hmm. What are some moments for you in your conversation with your partner to go like, wait, I didn't realize I was destroying safety here, but I was.
I think that I look back to like the beginning of our marriage and I see things that I did where I'm just like, man, it's sometimes it's just those little ways that you react. But the thing that I know that I did over and over was like when she would bring up problems, you know, she had enough safety and trust to bring up issues. And I would be defensive and justify myself. And, you know, a lot of times afterwards I would be like, oh man, maybe she does have a point. Maybe I do need to like change, but I wouldn't discuss it in a way that like reestablished she and trust. You know, I would kind of like try to just change on my own and I wouldn't even mention it to her. So of course she's not going to see. And so I did that over and over until, you know, finally she was like, she reached that point where she's like, I'm not going to bring things up anymore. And that's, you know, that was subconscious, but that's kind of the point where I thought like, oh, things are finally getting better because she's not bringing anything up. And the irony of seeing now that was actually the time when it had been destroyed completely, you know, and she was like, I'm not going to bring anything up. And then the ways that finally manifests were just that everything I did was taken with that confirmation bias of this is a person I don't trust. And that's what finally destroyed it. Yeah.
It's like the unfortunate thing about reality of life is like trust is not created in the moments where in the many moments where things are easy, but in the one moment where things are hard, right?
Yeah.
Like if let's say she doesn't trust your ability to control your emotions, for example, and you're trying to create that trust, you could be on vacation for a month and have no tough moments during the whole month. And you could have kept your emotions perfectly during the whole month, but then she doesn't care about that. She cares about the moment when you get to the airport, shit hits the fan, and you lose your shit. That's what she'll remember. You know, and that's what it will destroy or create trust, kind of thing. And that's, I think that's what you're saying. It's like, and it kind of goes back into the 4 ingredients of surrender because for your partner to surrender to safety is a surrender to safety too, surrender to trust. The second ingredient is very crucial of starving the counter evidence that you haven't changed. That's the hard part. And I think the hard part for a lot of people is they practice something until they can get it right, but they don't practice it until they can't get it wrong anymore. You know, so they're not a performer yet. And if that happens, like you can have very shiny moments sometimes when you're great, but you can also have some very dark moments when you're not great. But it's those dark moments that really count, you know? Yeah.
I mean, the way I've reframed it in my mind is that those are the moments when you break through, you know, that's what she wants to see is like when she shows up really angry, how do I react then? And that's really the only moment to build back trust, like you're saying. Like it's when and flipping that script where she expects me to react a certain way, and I react the total opposite way. So having that shift in my mind is like really key. Like when she's angry, my first thought is, this is great. Like this is the time to show that something's, you know.
And I think that's the thing that people don't understand about the striving versus like falling process, right? It's striving processes always require a lot of willpower. So when people strive to be emotionally more adept, for example, they use your willpower. But the problem is like people know this cycle very well, right? Where you get angry, you regret it, Then once you regret it, you tell yourself, I'll do better next time.
Mhm.
But then the next time comes and you get angry again. You don't know why you got angry. You just did. You regret it again. You regret even more. And you tell yourself, I'll try even harder next time. But you can live 5, 10, 15, 20 years like this. And you can stay in this cycle forever and never really change. That's what happens when you use this striving approach to get a falling outcome. Because to be honest, like surrendering to your emotions, being able to control it, it's a surrendering process. It's a shift, right? To shift, it's almost like Tai Chi. You have to shift it, but to shift it, you have to take it first, receive it, and go. And people don't understand that way of managing emotions. What we say is like, what we do is, if you want to change your emotions, then change your interpretations. So let's change the way you've been programmed, the paradigms that have been programmed in you, so that it will change the reflexive ways you think about a situation. And when you change the reflexive ways you think about a situation, you change your emotions. Mm-hmm. So, for example, a great example of this is like you said, right? When you get that resistance from your partner, when she resists you, she tells you a tough truth. Most people will say that's an inconvenient, annoying time. But you say, she's telling me something because she feels safe to tell me. Now that she told me this, I can actually do something about it. And now you actually embrace it. So your reflex is to embrace a resistance, not to reject it. And this is the kind of process where you no longer have to use willpower because the negative emotions didn't even arise. Mm-hmm. And that's what we mean by falling. What we mean by like thriving approaches, right? And that's the big difference. And I think one last thing to touch on, right, is going back to the conversation we have about the difference between YouTube or reading books, for example, on your own versus the program, is we take all of these very difficult soft skills, paradoxes, and we take it from you conceptually understanding it to you experientially understanding it.
Yeah.
Right? It's like you can teach someone how to do sales. You can read a book about sales. But to be honest, until you do sales and until you do sales in an environment which allows you to learn properly, like a proper gym, for example, doesn't matter how much you know. You can't perform it in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, just exactly what you're saying, like taking action and feedback was really key to like finding my blind spots and to making those shifts.
Yeah. Well, right on, that was an hour and a half. I know you got to pick up your mom for the airport. So I'm going to end it here. But before we end, I want to remind everyone again, like if you want to explore these paradoxes, these really deep internal mindsets that can really change the course of your life, not just with your romantic partner, but like with your children, with your friends, with everything, like you will never see and go through life the same way again. We have a masterclass. It's about an hour and a half long that goes through in very big picture, 10,000 foot view detail of what the program is, the different layers, etc. It's not going to go as deep as the program, of course, because the program is like close to 100 hours. But if you want to explore more, I encourage you to join the masterclass. And at the end of the masterclass, we show you how to apply for the program if you're interested in doing that. But just note that right now we only have room to accept less than 10% of clients who apply. So be sure when you fill up that application process, you pay close attention to everything we ask. Just like how you're applying for like a job interview or something like that, you're not gonna just like willy-nilly the whole thing, So with that said, guys, that's it for us. Ryan Swan, question for you, right? If you could transport yourself back to before you joined the program, what would be the one advice that you would give yourself?
Oh man. Like between separation and starting the program?
Sure.
Oh.
In those moments of like panic attack, like those darkest moments, what would you say to yourself?
Just tell myself to breathe, I think. But I'm, that's the great part of it. I have really no regrets about what's happened. I feel like it's all it's all been part of the process, and it's all gone just exactly how it needed to go for me to get where I'm at. And so, yeah, I'm really happy. I'm really happy with things right now.
Don't waste the pain. Don't resist the pain. Lead into it and see what it's trying to teach you here. Where is it trying to lead you? And I think that's why you're if I could look back at my pain, I would said something very similar to it. It's like, don't try to resist it. Don't wish it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Lean into it, embrace it, accept it, and go, what is it trying to teach me right now? Where can I go from here? I think that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, I definitely learned from it, and I'm so thankful for it. Yeah.
All right, Ryan. Thank you so much for an hour and a half of your time. That was so fun. I feel like I was able to go much deeper in this interview than I did most interviews, because it's nice whenever we're talking to someone who's like obviously knows a lot about the processes, the principles, and you're not afraid to go deep with me and like play ball with me. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was really great to talk. Yeah.
All right, man. You have a great day.
Okay, you too.
All right, bye.
Bye.
What do you think?
It's good. Yeah. Do you have just another second?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a question for you a little bit that I just haven't ever asked. But you mentioned in one of the modules doing MDMA.
Yep.
I was wondering because I've noticed something in people that are kind of able to really break out of the mold, and do something really original, which I feel like you've done. And I feel like a lot of times those people have had experiences with psychedelics. And I mentioned in my thing, that's part of what I'm doing now, like as my career. And I feel like that was actually a really big part of this process of me being able to let go and really accept, being able to like reevaluate everything that's in my brain. And I was wondering if you feel like that was at all part of your process, like just off the record, I guess, of course.
So I think here's my experience with it. But this is my personal experience, of course. I'm not like a doctor or whatever, but psychedelics like that are great if you want to get your mind out of the box.
Mm-hmm.
So the epiphany for me never happens when I am under psychedelics. It never happens there. Psychedelics is a way, or alcohol even, is a way for me to like lose my mind a bit. This box that I've created, get outside of it. So, for example, when I came up with like the falling versus striving epiphany, it was because I allowed my mind to wander.
Yeah.
But allowing your mind to wander is not a synthesis. It's an antithesis. It's you recognizing problems that you would never have recognized, etc. The synthesis comes usually after you come down from it, and usually coming down from it multiple times. So when you're on psychedelics, your mind doesn't know how to synthesize very well, but it knows how to let loose. It doesn't know how to put things together, but it knows how to put things apart. But once you get out of it, that's when you put things apart, put things together. I think writers kind of do the same thing where I think if you look at, I don't know if it's Stephen King or something, someone, can't remember, but he would take MDMA as well, and then he would do that for the creative part of his job. But then when he needs to actually write, he's sober as fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But then what's interesting is eventually, once you get there, right, once you have experienced, like we talk about state of consciousness, for example, and you observe yourself in that psychedelic moment, once you realize that your brain can get there, you can get there without drugs. Often. Yeah. And that's the point that I want to try to make. It's like, I'm not saying to get you addicted to MDMA, whatever it is. I'm saying this so that I want you to open your band of horizon to allow your brain to understand what ecstasy feels like, what MDMA feels like, right? So you can, it's almost like a map of your mind has been unlocked, and you can explore that map now, kind of thing, whenever you want, right? You don't need the secret ticket, whatever it is.
Yeah, there's a big part of being a facilitator is the integration afterwards, which is how are you going to actually apply this into your life? And that's like what you're saying, the synthesis of, okay, you learned something or you came outside of something and then putting it back together. Like,
I think
what
so.
forward.
I think so.
That's,
Because,
I mean,
like,
that's what we're training to do with people.
I think so. And it's almost like a MacGyver kind of thing, right? It's like, yeah, MacGyver is really good at synthesizing the things that he has to make something amazing. But what if MacGyver has no materials? Forget it. He can be fucking MacGyver. It doesn't matter, right? So the act of like losing your mind is gather the materials, gather the raw materials. Some materials are needed, some materials are not needed. Who cares? Just gather them all. And then once we gather them all, we use a synthetic brain to go, how do we MacGyver this shit?
Yeah. I just want to say really quick that the experience I had was right after she said she wanted to separate. I did 5 grams of mushrooms and MDMA at the same time. And a tree just said to me, let go. And that was it. And I was like, oh no, like I have to let go of her, you know, and I didn't really understand it or know what it meant. And then I started the program and it was like started right with Untethering. And I was like, this is it. And that was part of me being able to embrace so much of like, this is how I let go. And this is what, you know, doesn't, you know, stops me from destroying the relationship.
And what's interesting is you already knew to let go. You already knew that, right?
I knew it, but I didn't know, you're saying, I didn't know how. I didn't even know what it meant really. But it was like, gotta let go.
Exactly. It's almost like throughout life, right? We're always like subliminally taking in stuff. And if we're subconsciously taking in stuff, we're always filing it away somewhere. But then when you have this experiences, it's almost like, oh, now all the vaults are unlocked and now I have access to all the things that I have never thought of before. I didn't think I was taking in before. So you knew the answer, but then you just never knew you had the raw materials kind of thing. It's kind of an interesting sensation.
Yeah. It's really, all of it really has just been so wonderful. And I'm really, really thankful to you. So, like I said in my intake or my, the form I filled out, like this has been life-changing for my kid, for my family. So, you know, you've given my kid a different life. Like he sees us interacting all the time where we love each other. And
that's amazing.
That's happy
generations. Yeah. 2 months ago, we had our third instance where we had like someone's son actually enroll in the program. So the dad took the program first, and the dad told his son to take it. I'm like, oh shit, this is multi-generational now. That's pretty cool.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, my kid's 5, but I'm really like the things I'm learning in the program apply so much to parenthood.
It does.
You know?
It does.
Like he gets mad, and I instead of like telling him to like be quiet or like settle down, it's like, oh, why is he feeling mad? Like what's coming up for him? You know, he's come through like a separation of his parents, and there's a lot, you know, he's struggling in kindergarten and stuff, and it's I'm applying this stuff just as much to the relationship with him as I am to her. So
good. Yeah, I love that. Hey Ryan, do you mind if I put this last part in? That was a fucking good conversation. Is it okay?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. I'll leave you to it. Bye.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, man.
Bye.